All right, everybody. Sorry about all of that. David here with the Left Reckoning Postgame. We got the upbeat music playing. Matt Leck is looking beautiful as always. How are you doing, brother?
Howdy, David.
Sorry about the issues, friend. I think Matt and I are learning in real time that we need to break up with our streaming program. So we are going to be doing this live, and I think publicly for the the general audience. I couldn't figure out how to make it private, so doors open, friends. But if for all the people who've been supporting us, we'll have a clean video version of this out for y'all later, as well as the podcast version, as always. And if you are jumping in on the free side, do consider joining us at patreon.com/leftreckoning.
Yeah, it's strange because I'm mirrored in a way that is very disoriented. I gotta fix that actually, because like you don't realize how used you are to seeing the symmetry of your face one way when you look at yourself online all the time.
Totally.
And,
No, I know it is a little jarring, but I think we figured it out at least for now.
Yeah,
We're trying out a new software. So, anyways, folks, be patient with us. We are just completely done with our former streaming service, so we are trying out something live in front of all of you lovely people. We'll see if we can do calls. If we're not able to, I will keep my eye out on the chat and see if we can get those up. I don't know if I'll be able to put them up on screen, but we'll read them out for folks. And yeah, man, I mean, what's on the docket? I know I'm all mixed up now. I don't really fucked up my flow.
yeah. No, so I was in the middle of talking about Insider.
I know we also did a secret show too, which are always the best.
Yeah. I was in the middle of doing a thing on Insider, and I'm like, oh crap, I fell off and didn't realize. Oh, David, everything crashed. I think this Amazon Web Services had a big outage this afternoon. But anyway, folks, we have bosses behaving badly. Which is some great content as far as I'm concerned on camera. So Insider is an outlet, kind of Obama era blog style. Think of BuzzFeed sort of thing, often aggregate news site. I'm a little bit resentful because I did a phone interview, but I applied there like 8 times throughout my unemployment, each time requiring like a writing sample for free. Here's 400, 800 free words. And then I didn't hear back, but even if I had, those jobs were very low paying, not, paying writers a living wage, and this is like 2012, 13. So, nonetheless, or actually because of that, the workers have come together and formed collective action and are actually on strike on their second week of strike activity. Just got footage of some of the folks on strike seeing one of their bosses, and this is Insider editor Nicholas Carlson, and they see him on a city bike removing flyers in support of the strike.
Oh yeah, so Matt, you gotta tell me the number.
It's hard. I don't know. It's the.
I'll find it.
It's the third one. I'm pretty sure that I put in there.
I got it for you. Don't worry, friend. We're trying out this new thing, so here we go.
Start with 2023. Yeah, here we go.
Did you know?
It's a layoff.
Are you recording your end?
I am.
Who are you?
I'm one of your reporters.
You're not my.
That's how you look at it.
I'm not your reporter.
You're not my news.
I was like, I'm not your reporter anymore because you laid me off. And guess what? You laid off everyone that comes up to me. Bye!
And watch this motherfucker.
The dismount.
Down.
Pulls off 2 more.
What's he doing there?
He's ripping off the poster that the strikers put up in
So
support of their
we're gonna have to
labor
figure
action.
these things out. I think that the quality for the audience wasn't super great with that, unfortunately, Matt.
Oh, okay.
But that is video if you need to see it to believe it, of a strike breaker, right? Or their boss ripping down pro union posters, right?
Yeah, exactly. We'll try. Let me try this, and if this doesn't work, folks, yeah, we're trying
I
to
have to
find a
do a low
replacement.
tech show.
It turns out, yeah, some of them aren't great, but tell me how this works, David. Here we go.
Better.
Hey.
Find this like frustrating.
Almost as
Did you
frustrating as
know-
a layoff.
Are you recording me right now?
I am.
Who are you?
I'm one of your reporters.
You're not my reporter.
Well, I guess that depends on how you look at it. I work for the news.
I'm not your
It's
reporter.
not my newsroom.
I was like, I'm not your reporter anymore because you laid me off. And guess what? You laid off everyone on the crypto team. Bye.
Oh, he's pulling them all down.
His tape.
Jesus Christ.
You know what I like about it is, and this is, we always used to talk about this clip from Silicon Valley with Michael, about the guy say he was looking down at a strike or a protest. Pretty sure it was a strike. It was definitely a labor action, and said, 100 years ago we would have had people like that killed, and now we can't, and like basically a frustration, but like to actually see like. We're at a very interesting time right now because people ask like, how do you stay positive? And it's like, well, you don't look at the Democratic Party, But on the other hand, we have this other stuff going on, like these rising labor consciousness. Like back in 2007, I remember when I was becoming politically aware, the idea like was a union good or bad to somebody who didn't come from like a union household was like, oh no, it's probably bad, right? Like look at all these, even like the wonks on the wonk blog on the Washington Post, they're saying, there's downsides and this or that. And like we're in a much better place as far as that goes now. And you see it in how, Howard Schultz and folks like that are sweating. And like capturing stuff like this, I think is just really like how they have to fight and and it's Weasley and it's not like, it's not something to be proud of. And we have a point where, look, these things are basically surveillance devices, and they're used against us. But we can, to the extent that we can, we got to point them at especially bosses like this who are, riding around on city bikes, pulling down flyers.
No, I mean totally, and like I think particularly in places like New York too, a lot of these bosses sort of enjoy this kind of, I don't know, post labor, if you want to call it that,
Yes.
like liberalism, right? Where they got to sort of not think that, like, well, unions are for coal miners, right? And they're for like a certain kind of industry. They're not for me. I ride a bicycle, don't you see? Right? And it's really like, I think that they aren't ready yet for the PR problems that they're about to go through. There's been a lot of questions about like some of the like increase in like militancy from, more professional unions, let's call them that, right? But if anything, what this shows is that most of us are in the same kind of struggle. Most of our bosses don't respect us, despite the fact that maybe there's something nice in the office for you to drink or do when you're hanging out there. And like the PR that these guys are going to get as their behavior is more and more exposed over the next few years, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And it is that thing of like, oh yeah, we're all, I mean, the extent these people are like Democrats or whatever, like Obama types, like that's what and I mentioned this, I think in the first attempt at a post game tonight, is like, I associate Insider with the Obama era. And you have Obama doing all these projects on Netflix now about, it's tough out there for the worker. And it's like, yeah, look at this like sort of atmosphere that was created, like in the wake of the financial crisis, and all this gig economy shit. You invited Uber to be the official chauffeur of the 2016 Democratic Convention.
Hmm. No, no. I mean, like, look, the reckoning that is like starting to happen, I think, in like, let's just call them the liberal circles, I think is just good for the labor movement and for just like class politics in general. Because for so long, like, like a John Stewart viewer, let's call him, right? Like,
Anti-labor, John Stewart. Yeah,
bosses are bad because they're mean, right? Which is
right.
not really the pro. I mean, like, yes, bosses are mean, but why are they mean? Why do they do the things that they do? Because they're trying to squeeze as much value out of you as possible. And I've seen this happen with people who are close to me. You see this a lot, like in the tyranny of a lot of like small businesses, right? Where bosses are like, they're like, oh, I would never be like the other boss. I'm so like, I'm considerate of other people. Well, when you will really learn what kind of boss you're going to be versus what, if you're going to live up to those ideas of that you have of yourself, are if like maybe you taking a little bit less home at the end of the month as the owner of the company versus firing 4 employees, right? That's when you become like the boss in its full sense. And like, I don't know, like there's always like, you see this sometimes with some people that they think that the reason that capitalism is like messed up and it harms people is because like there's too many rude people at the top of the system versus like, no, there's just like these cold hard calculations that come with being in that
Right.
position, and your self-interest is one way. It becomes very clear to you when you're running a business, for example. And I don't know, like all the values and your willingness to talk and talk things out, they disappear really quickly when a union starts
The
showing up in your
structure literally
doorstep.
separates you and your promises, like because like to really you would need to make it like a cooperative, right? Like that, the whole like deciding it to be like I'm the boss here, like that's a decision that has already made that sort of cleavage. And so like yeah, it's not just that's already a split. You can't paper over that with, and we're seeing now stuff with like, I don't want to get too bogged down, but like Starbucks recently announced, Howard Schultz of Starbucks
Hmm.
recently announced, we're not going to do the LGBT stuff. And
Yeah.
uh, like that's sort of extras, or like, I mean, even more gratuitously like meaningless is like the NFTs stuff. You know what? Let your folks unionize if you want to do so, right by them. But yeah,
No,
uh,
totally.
good for those is insider reporters doing some good reporting there on their own
Well,
folks. And I
just
also just gotta say, the New York Post. Maybe I should look this up. New York Post, are they unionized? Let's see. I'm not sure if the New York Post is unionized.
if
Doesn't
they
come
aren't, they
straight
should
up,
be.
but like, yeah, I wonder what their editors feel about that sort of article. Like, I know it's like a rival. I love running that, but like, you better be careful next time contract negotiations come up.
No, totally. Well, just want to say I am not able to share these right now. For people who are joining us and wondering why the post game is public, it's because we had a pretty critical failure with our typical streaming software, so we figured to open this up to the people. So apologies for some of the technical issues that we might face today, but did want to just shout out Pythagoras. Um, 185 for the super chat. Appreciate you very much. See, Matt, these are some of the things we can do with this new program that we're
Wow.
using. So we're doing this live. We're learning how to use this program live. Sorry for any technical issues, but thanks everyone for hanging out with us. I know we got a couple more videos, and I think we should just do what you did last time if you're able to, Matt.
Yep.
But before we get there, at the end of the show, we were talking a little bit about RFK, and Matt sort of said that he had heard these rumblings and whispers that Cornell West might be pursuing a Green Party nomination instead of just running as the People's Party. This is all coming out now, so this is early days, so don't want to talk beyond my knowledge. But as of just 10 minutes ago, Cornell West did announce on his campaign Twitter account that he will be seeking the Green Party nomination for president. And I will pull that up really fast for everyone, because we'll have to see what it actually ends up meaning in its fullness. Let's see. You can see that? Yep. I'll zoom in a little bit on his beard. Cornell West, in the spirit of a broad united front and coalition strategy, I am pursuing the nomination of the Green Party for President of the United States. Go to cornellwest24.com for more information, show support, and then I think and he thanks the volunteers of the People's Party for the initial launch. So we'll have to see what that ends up meaning. I mean, he's saying that he's pursuing the nomination. I will say that a reminder that the Green Party has had some weird things happen in their nomination process. I'm sure. I'm sorry. I'm like. I'm pretty sure that like Cornel West will be able to win the Green Party nomination. Right. But I mean, this is a step in a good direction, I would say, though, barring any new information that we might be getting in the next few days about the extent about this and whether or not he's going to continue his association with the People's Party or not. It's positive versus him just sort of hunkering down within the People's Party.
Yeah, I mean, my gleaning of he was on Katie Halper's program too, and I believe the quote was, and again, we were doing a show at this time as well,
Yeah.
but that there was too much going on internally, and to keep it moving forward, he's going with the Green Party, and I think that is.
I mean, as we
good.
said, like this was the thing
Yeah.
that was so mind-boggling about working with the People's Party in the first place because they don't. I think they have ballot access in 3 states, not really ones that are like battleground states in the first place. So like why do that if you're trying to run, on a third party ticket if they don't open up any doors for you? I think there might have been a realization there internally, but again, who knows what's going on behind the scenes? But I mean, like, what does this announcement mean practically? I mean, it means that there might be more of a serious attempt to win votes than just a pure messaging campaign, right? Because that was one of the issues was, is this just another messaging campaign, or is there's kind of move to win? I have to say it doesn't reflect very positively on the campaign to sort of start with this bungled People's Party launch. I'll say, as I said before, like, supporting Cornel West is something that's generally fairly easy for me to do in terms of like what he believes. I think he's somebody who's a lot closer to my politics than most of the other people running for president. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a positive development, if nothing else, and we'll have to see what comes out of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's what that's what we said with Gene and Ben. Is it just seems like if you're going to do this, why not do it with someone, an organization which, like, and more about the internal Green Party stuff than I do. That they have their own problems, but like they at least like did get ballot access and have run presidential candidates
Yeah,
before.
really, they also
right?
like run candidates regularly, right, for Senate and
Yeah.
Congress and things like that.
And so like that it's funnily enough like kind of a reason that people say, hey, or Ben Burgess you should just run the Democratic Party. It's not like they're perfect, but at least the infrastructure is there. Like it's a similar reason why you choose the Green Party or the People's Party, and I'm glad he did it.
Yeah. So anyways, as we get more info on that, and I'm sure we will revisit the Cornel West campaign unless anyone had anything pressing on it. We might move on. We'll be taking Discord questions in a second. If people have questions in the YouTube chat, we're happy to take those as well. So throw those in there. But should we get to this next bit, Matt? Which one did you want to do first?
So do you want to do graphics cards?
Let's do graphics card again. I mean, Matt is on like a one-man mission to radicalize the gamers. I think the gamers could be a very important coalition to build solidarity with, as Matt, especially me as well as a gamer. Speaking as a gamer.
Exactly. So the gamers are not happy with the monopolies that are in charge of graphics card productions, the couple of them that sort of fake competition now. I'm somebody who I have like about a 5-year-old graphics card now, probably looking to upgrade. I probably would do it now, and then I started watching all of these folks and saying it's not a bad time because of what's happened post-crypto. And I'm somebody who actually, I feel naive about this, but one crypto proponent argument I did buy was that actually them selling all these GPUs, graphics processors, to crypto miners is going to be good for actually the production of graphics cards. It's basically going to like boost it, and we're going to. And what actually happened was it was impossible to buy graphics cards for a long ass time because they were all being snatched up immediately and used for pointless calculations, for pointless, cryptocurrencies. That collapsed. So now you would think like the prices are going to come back. But this is where we move from crypto to inflation, or what people are calling greedflation, which to me, like I don't know about you, David, but in products like this, I feel like it's kind of all a little bit of greed. Like if I buy a $1,200 graphics card versus $800, I can tell it's for my business, but come on.
Yeah.
Come on. But anyway, it's still like a problem that capitalists can just decide, like, I have this market completely cornered. We're going to jack up or maintain these prices. And what's happened basically is, I don't want to get too deeply into it, but like, let's say what was a B card when I bought it, they're still calling it a B card now, or they call it an A card now, and they charge $400 for it. And these sorts of things, like the die size for the silicon and the different types of components, these are things that computer nerds can break apart and see, oh, you're not giving me the same sort of memory bandwidth, you're not giving me this or that, you're cheaping out. And they're able to do this in part because of, one, what crypto did to their stock price, and now what AI is. Before we get into some tech nerds breaking that stuff down, I want to share this video of a compilation footage from Computex in Taiwan a few weeks ago, which is the NVIDIA CEO. NVIDIA is the main graphics card sort of creator. They hold the prime position. The others, Intel and AMD, are sort of fighting for second place at like under 10% margin share combined. Maybe I'm missaying that a little bit, but that's basically where we're at. So NVIDIA is the one that's really been driving up the prices here and allowing them to stick. And here is their new sort of pitch to gamers. And it's very AI focused.
Everything is real time.
It's the CEO talking off screen.
Hey, Jen. How are you?
Unfortunately, not so good.
How come?
I'm worried about the crime around here. It's gotten bad. My ramen shop got caught in the crossfire.
Can I help?
If you want to do something about this, I have heard rumors that the powerful crime lord Kuman Aoki is causing all sorts of chaos in the city. He may be the root of this violence.
I'll talk to him. Where can I find him?
I have heard he hangs out in the underground fight clubs on the city's east side. Try there.
Okay, I'll go.
Be careful, Kai.
None of that conversation was scripted. We gave this Jin AI character a backstory. His story about his ramen shop and the story of this game. All you have to do is go up and talk to this character. And because this character has been infused with artificial intelligence and large language models, it can interact with you, understand your meaning in a really reasonable way.
Okay, so now what's been going on with AI is interesting, because that is bullshit, and we'll go into why like that is not exciting to me as a gamer at all. That's basically like, oh, the thing you used to have to pay people to script out and maybe put a little bit of pizzazz in, you can now just have a computer like spit that shit out. Okay, like, so now you have zero reason to ever do any of that except scan it for the relevant like location information or whatever like that. I will grant one thing, that AI actually is doing something interesting for NVIDIA. They have interesting technologies. Now, so, and I have to get a little bit technical about this, but so your 60 frames per second screen, right? Like that's a really, like, gamers want more frames per second. NVIDIA has basically allowed AI to create more frames based on the frames that the GPU is creating. Basically, like quickly, like, you know how it can create pictures like ChatGPT or whatever, not ChatGPT, but they can artificially generate that little frame that's coming between the ones that it can generate. There's something called DLSS, deep learning, and it's super sampling, and like that, and these sorts of things, they're good. They actually do make the experience good, but that's masking for them lowering the actual raw production of the stuff that they're not simulating with the AI. And let me just play and like that's definitely a trade-off. And it's basically them making up with software. And so they're raising the price, lowering the quality of components, and then making up for that with sort of trickery with the software. And that's a problem. So that all said, that's all me as a Marxist, sort of my analysis of it. I want to play 3 folks from online that have sort of, to give you a sample of how people are talking about this. And now, David, I want your idea of how we address this, because one idea is that actually these folks afloat themselves is the gaming unit of NVIDIA should be spun off, should be a different company from all this AI stuff. And that seems like an interesting antitrust solution. But I'm curious, and one that also, it I think respects the workers for these companies, because even though they are like these are like well-off workers, they're not like they're not coal miners, right? But I honestly my solutions always want to still empower those sorts of folks. But here is a compilation of folks, and I'll put the links to this in the show notes as well.
So how does this relate to gamers?
This being NVIDIA's stock price doing much better than gamers were hoping, because gamers were hoping that there was collapse in sales. Nobody's buying graphics cards right now, and gamers are going to be like, you just wait till earnings. And earnings came around, and NVIDIA is like the one tech stock that is going bonkers right now, and it's because of AI.
I say that the GPU shortage is back. Well, first of all, NVIDIA can't even keep up with demand of the AI GPUs. Yes, gaming GPUs are abundantly available. That's why NVIDIA, and now you know the connection, they're keeping those prices high, and they're not really lowering them as much as we would think would be fair. Because they don't have to. They're making so much money between their AI sales as well as the valuation of their company that the gaming market, as long as they keep the GPUs at a certain level, they can sell less and it'll be okay.
So we're sitting here listening to all this AI announcements, and we're sort of thinking about.
So this is Hardware Unboxed. That first guy, that was, I just want to get the citations in here, classical technology.
I guess how would you put it? Like, it isn't. NVIDIA going down this path of AI isn't great news for gamers. And especially the reaction from the industry to NVIDIA's move to AI, the recent financial reports, and basically the shares just skyrocketing on the results of AI. All that stuff, it doesn't spell great news for everyday people who just want to buy cheap GPUs.
It's definitely bad news for gamers, unfortunately. And I feel like we've been saying that on repeat for a couple of years now. Obviously, we had the cryptocurrency boom. Cryptocurrency mining was bad for gamers. You guys, I don't need to repeat that one. And as I've been saying in our Q&As repeatedly now, it seems like NVIDIA and AMD is somewhat going along for the ride. They're trying to recondition the market, recondition gamers into believing that $400, $500 GPUs are now the new sort of entry level, whereas they were half that once upon a time.
And I think,
and this guy is Moore's Law is dead. And I just want to sidebar on that name for a second. Moore's Law is this idea that computational technology, and I'm going to get this wrong, so forgive me, like computer nerds, but it basically doubles over a certain amount of years, right? Like it's basically expanding. And NVIDIA's CEO, the guy you saw earlier, has said that that's dead. And it's suspicious at a time where he's jacking up prices for less and less quality, right? Because and look, there may be some physics restraint to this as transistors get smaller and smaller, but we are letting basically profit-seeking capitalists who serve investors be the ones in charge of making that determination of something like that. And to the credit of the industry prior to this, it had been good about delivering those gains over years. And it'd be a degradation of techno-capitalism if it can't do that anymore. So here's the final clip I'll play.
I think we have to understand that there's a very real chance that AI is already becoming a financial bubble, just like blockchain was, which, oh yeah, NVIDIA bet on the blockchain bubble and then immediately switched to the AI bubble to save their earnings. And while I am definitely not saying that the AI bubble is the same as the blockchain bubble, it is just a fact that you can find some pretty meme-worthy quotes from Jensen Huang where he was talking about NFTs the same way he's talking about AI now, and it is really coincidental that they are all of a sudden all in on AI the second the blockchain bubble burst. Also, guys, just because something's a bubble doesn't mean it's illegitimate. AI can be in a bubble and still be something that's going to be a big part of our future. But if that bubble were to pop, that means NVIDIA would feel way more pain than otherwise, because the segment they would usually be depending on to bail them out, gaming, is down way more than their competition.
So that's sort of where we're at. And I wanted to include that last thing because I like when I hear from non-ideological, I mean, maybe these guys are all Marxists and I just have no idea. But I like to hear confirmation of these sorts of analyses, right? And yeah, like, I don't know, like that the crypto thing, and like what you said about AI, like I think that is true. I think, like, look, that this sort of technology, basically advanced microchips. Guess what? Yeah, that has an impact.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, a fancy type of accounting, overly redundant accounting system doesn't. Nonetheless, we're in a tech recession, and part of this is boosterism by investors and stuff like that.
I mean, I think there's just no doubt about it. And, like, you know, if people want more info on this, you should definitely listen to our interview with Dwayne Monroe on it. And, like, specifically on this kind of the boosterism, when it sort of gets away from like the technology. And what I mean by that is that, you know, this idea that you know, like chips and all of these things, they have to exist in physical space. And the idea that they can just continue to advance, you know, to get us to, for example, like some kind of something that could maybe be considered artificial intelligence in the way that a lot of these people try to portray AI is right now. Because basically what these are is like extremely, you know, exciting in a lot of ways, but basically like extremely fast computer systems. And it's great. They can work through things with a lot of speed. There's a lot of practical uses for that. There are some things that I'm sure will be really helpful and I think different from example like crypto, but there's also a lot of need to try to fudge the numbers and also to like cash in on the public perception of this. I will just say, not to take us away from this more fun technical conversation, Matt, but the non-scripted video game stuff is just such a bore to me.
No, we have to return to this. Yeah.
Because, you know, like, I can get like the idea of like immersiveness could be sort of fun, right? You're not sort of limited to what a writer has written for you, but also working in a world that a writer has written for you is way more exciting. There's a reason that you play games. There's a reason that you read novels that someone else has written, right? Because it could sometimes be exciting and beneficial in the long run to sort of play out a story. You know, like, I mean, I was saying something to you, Matt, I think a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this, right? Is in Skyrim, there was always this kind of like fan theory that there was a secret like dwarven city that doesn't exist in the game, right?
Right.
Because there's like these little clues and stuff that are left out there, right? So they were purposeful by the authors of the game to sort of put, oh, maybe there's some mystery, and maybe if you explore in a certain way, maybe you can be the first person who's played this massive game to discover this thing.
Right.
Turns out to not be true, right? But it was like an exciting, fun thing. And it's cool to think, it's like, as a writer, to create maybe something out there like that.
Yeah.
Now, if AI, right, some kind of randomized program like that is sort of tricking me into thinking something exists in the game that doesn't, that's a real bummer, right? That sucks. And like I can
and it's
imagine...
not intriguing because it lacks a human perspective. Like, There's the exact same thing in the Grand Theft Auto games. In San Andreas, there was like this sort of like, if you follow these, there's like clues in the desert that you can do a jetpack, and it's like they put that there for that reason. And it's like, oh, there's this one wall you go into and there's a literal Easter egg, right? In Vice City, I'm pretty sure I remember. And it's like, that's because a human being put it there. And it's interesting because a human being did that. If a computer just did that randomly, it'd just be like, oh, this fucking stupid computer put her dumbass egg in the wrong place. That's not interesting.
And you could do that with any form of art, right? Like the idea of like pop music or any kind of song, right? There's always going to be something, you need something to imbue any kind of art with meaning. And like that's the thing that's been really frightening, and a good example of why we need, for example, humanities education,
right?
Versus like what a lot of these kind of big tech boosters, despite what they argue, because like this idea that like, oh wow, a computer could make the Mona Lisa. They think that that's like inspiring or exciting to people, or who is that? Some person was zooming out on like great pictures.
It shows you the rest of the artworks. Yeah,
and it's like there's nothing exciting about that. Like it's just like it's such a bizarre thing that that it seems like a lot of like this is going to be. I think there could be a real disaster moment here where if they try, and companies are going to, it's just no doubt about it, are going to try to replace a lot of cultural work, at least that's like for consumption and like for commerce, with AI. And I think it's going to be really disastrous for them because, there might be something to using on Adobe like a kind of computer made like beat in like a video because you don't want to have to find a real person. But like no one is going to want, like some bizarre version of, like a beautiful song like Poncho and Lefty, right? Poncho and Lefty, incredible song, Townes Van Sant. There's a lot of lyrics in there that aren't really clear as to what he means, right? And I feel like a tech person would be like, yeah, exactly. Like sometimes you can be, obscure, like let other people fill in their meanings. But like the point was that Townes Van Sant like came up with this like very fascinating vision that you want to know more about. It is it's so much cheaper to just like, instead of it being a mystery, like, oh, what was the real meaning of what Townes Van Sant was trying to say in Poncho and Lefty, to replace that with like, oh, well, yeah, it's just a randomized like tech software that is writing songs and music for us.
Yeah. So actually, a great example of this and how like look, I don't want to say it's entirely uninteresting, but it is. That's all it is. It's just mildly interesting for a little bit. So I can't really zoom in on this any better than I.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, here we go. Yeah. Okay. So there's this thing that I remember from. Let me find you. Crap.
Again, for folks who are joining us, we had a real tech issue, so we were trying out some new software tonight. So forgive.
Yeah.
Tech
so
issue.
like months ago, I saw this meme going around. Rest of the Dark Side of the Moon AI, and you can see on the over here, right, or even here, like the middle is the Dark Side of the Moon cover, and it uses AI to infer what might be around it. And look,
oh my God.
I paged through a few of those. It's kind of interesting in the way that like alternate logos made by somebody on Reddit is, right? Like, but ultimately, like, you have to feel a sense of hollowness that like, oh no, this isn't like, there's nothing actually there. And I think it really demonstrated that is Maddox, a blogger from Bush era, who I really enjoyed when I first got the internet. It's funny to see him on Twitter now. Posted this example from Magritte, which is, so Rene Magritte, if people don't know, French surrealist, and he, so this famous piece that has like a pear in front of the guy's face, and Maddox, removed that part and then challenged the AI to guess what was actually supposed to be there, and you can see it's just like that's not that interesting.
No,
you can see why it thinks what's there is there, but that doesn't tell you anything about Magritte. It gets you no closer to the actual artist or the art even. And it's just like a trick, and it's like fine, but like, is it world changing?
No, I'm sorry. What, I think, one of the points that like, we've been making about AI has been one to like sort of ground people's expectations on this technology. Right. But the second one has always been, what is this going to mean for labor? Because even if, the quality is lower, there's no doubt that companies are going to say, well, this is a lot cheaper than having a human behind it. Right? And just think about everything. Like from like food quality when it gets mass produced, right?
Mhm.
To to all these things. Like Capital is very happy with taking something that like exists and has like a certain level of quality and craftsmanship or purpose to it, to cheapen it and mass produce it. And there's ways to do it. Like there's things that are great about mass production in the sense of like we want there to be more like food and we want people to be able to afford a chair or a coat or something like that, right?
Right.
But also knowing that like that is not the egalitarian goal is not what's behind it. It's like
No.
this is very profitable for me, so we can let the quality like decline tremendously. And like they're hoping to be able to do that with art. They're hoping to be able to do that with games, with music, etc.
With medicine.
Yeah, and this is like something that could be, I mean, I think there's just no doubt that it's going to be tried to utilized in a lot of ways. I think people would be really pissed about it, but it's just going to be such a good dollar and cents saver for companies that they're going to try to implement it in ways that are going to be really maddening for people. And it's also scary. I mean, like this is a separate point. So actually, you go ahead.
Well, I just want to reiterate the Dwayne Monroe point about this being basically like a elite class propaganda talking point against labor, because he showed that. And again, like you think about the games that you're actually interested in playing, it's the ones where they actually take a lot of effort and put a lot of style and character into those moments, right? Like Disco Elysium, the one that Matt Crispin voiced. Like, or I think the original early version he voiced, but like that thing, the care that they put into the story there, that's because of the writers. It's because of the human beings. And you can't simulate that. And it's like the only people who are impressed by that are the people thinking, oh shit, I don't have to pay writers anymore. We can get that same shit. And it's like, and this is the same thing as I mentioned earlier with Bill Simmons talking with Derek Thompson of The Athletic. Derek Thompson challenged to like names one future way, solution to this. And again, it goes to like crypto guys. Let's look at a real societal need, like healthcare to people. And it's like, okay, we can make chatbot doctors. And how about we do Medicare for all instead of that? How about we do single payer? Or we can wait to magical chatbots that are better than like the doctors we should be hiring and training right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fundamental point too, is that like beyond practical applications for these things, the grandiose claims from things like, we can do ChatGPT doctors versus Medicare for all, or the more insane claims like Bitcoin is going to help Palestinians who are living under apartheid be able to have their own banking, right? There is an aspect in the ideology of like the tech optimists, you can call them maybe. I mean, like I'm generally like a tech optimist. I think like utilizing technology in socially useful ways is good for society, and it's something that any socialist should be able, to support. It's never the machines themselves or the technology themselves that is the problem. It's how we use them and what they are used for that becomes like the issue. But the second thing is like with this kind of like fetishization of like technology that you get from like the people who also have an interest in it being fetishized, it's always stuff that we actually have the social technologies to deal for.
Right.
Like, for example, like as you were saying, like universal healthcare, or I don't know, an end to settler colonialism in Palestine.
Postal banking, right? Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like the idea that like we need some technology in here to sort of make those things happen is ludicrous. I'm all for example, like a very high tech and effective Medicare for all system or universal healthcare system that might utilize some technologies in ways that are labor saving in the way that they help people who have expertise and the ability to help out more people or to do it better or whatever, right? Like that's great. You don't want it to be utilized, for example, to throw nurses out of hospitals because they're asking for a living wage, right? And there is that real threat here. The other thing too is like I think publicly it's really important, just like tech literacy. One thing that really frightens the hell out of me, and it's anecdotal, but I just see it regularly on social media, and particularly like on Twitter, is I think a lot of people out there do think that ChatGPT is some level of intelligence, where if you have it wrestle with a question that is like the same thing as like citing something. And I see people that will oftentimes be in the response to like a journalist or somebody like that, and they'll be like, well, I asked ChatGPT about this and they said this, like something that being it's like, well, it has no idea what it's saying. You can get it to say a lot of different things that are contradictory with themselves. I mean, the best example is always try to get ChatGPT to do math for you and see how often it struggles with that. By the way, was like the first thing that computers did. Right. It's also the thing that like that computer is doing too behind the scenes, but it doesn't have the same kind of conception of numbers that we do. So that even though behind the scenes is using like complicated like math effectively to be able to scan through a lot of information, it has no conception of what 2 times 2 is, right? Like it has to be translated to it for it to be able to understand that. And people seem to miss that in a way that really frightens me, frankly, that a lot of people are going to be looking for advice from something that is just searching for a plausible answer that like we may be able to understand as the language. And that's effectively what ChatGPT does.
Yeah, it reminds me of when these autofill games were going around, and if it's like, okay, you put the term "I drink" into your phone, and then just keep hitting predictive text and see what it says, and it's like it's vaguely like something you might say because it's your fucking vocabulary being phrased back to you. This is just a more advanced version of that. Yeah. Like it's slightly more useful.
And of course, and it can be useful in some ways, but it's like you have to understand what these things are and also understand what they're trying to do, the companies behind it.
Which is to not give you better video game stories.
To not give you a lot of things that you deserve, friends. Well, we got some, I'm sure we have a bunch of questions and things like that to get to. Do you just want to say thank you so much to our good friend Dylan from Australia for the super chat, who says, and I will just read it because he super chatted us. Gig'em King, sorry you're suffering with technical issues, but Aggie Nation is behind you. No. I'm all for solidarity except for with the Texas A&M University. All right, should we do some Discords, Matt? Or
let's do it.
All right, we have a few Discords here to start with, and if people in the YouTube chat want to ask a question, feel free. I don't know if I'll be able to get to them all. We're going to give Discord our patrons priority, but maybe at Left Reckoning so I can see it over the rest of the chat in it. But Major Uncle Matt says, what books have y'all started reading but had to stop because it was so depressing? Mine was The Devil's Chessboard. Odious. I just couldn't keep reading.
Devil's Chessboard is about the Dulles brothers' assassinations worldwide, and also suggestively the JFK assassination. I don't know. I read a lot of depressing stuff. There was a book, The Sleepwalkers, which is about Europe leading up to World War One. Basically, like how that war came about and how like a lot of people didn't expect it, and then things went just south. Honestly, that one I read, and that's the last one I remember being like, "Damn, this is fucking." Well, one like, but I have a weird reaction when I read that stuff because it's like, oh, it's better now, and it's not necessarily true. Like, climate change is more of a pressing issue now, and but like, there wasn't like Jim Crow. I mean, at least here, right? Like to me, like it's that sense of like history is depressing. But it's almost like fortifying too.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever put down a book because I read something that was too disturbing. But that's just because I believe in free speech. What?
I'll say like the books, the Dead Hand, a Command and Control, a few of like these books on like nuclear missile near misses and control and like us flying around with bombers and stuff like that. That stuff freaks the shit out of me.
Oh yeah. Social Justice Wizard says, I'll be visiting New York City, the Big Apple, in a couple weeks, staying with some family in Brooklyn. Was wondering if either of you, but mainly Matt, have any good recommendations of bars, shops, shows, pride events. This is public. I'll send the other stuff to you, Matt, later.
Interesting. Bars. There's a newly unionized pizza place in Brooklyn, Crown Heights, Barboncino. You know that place, David?
Yeah.
I have been meaning to get over there.
Have you been there though?
I haven't been there in a while. I actually went there years ago when my parents were in town. It's a nice little pizza place.
When I lived in New York, that place was around the corner from where I lived. So it was, I think, my first or my second meal in that town. You know, it's a great place if you want to look for a fun spot in Brooklyn that a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people who live there know it, but it's a good spot. Long Island Bar on Atlantic. It's a personal favorite. They got nice food, good drinks. You can drink beer or you can drink a martini. You can pick your vibe, that's like, for me, my favorite kind of bar, in like the general sense, is like a place where, like, if you want to get something nice, you can get it, but if you want to just drink canned beer, you can drink that as well. And
You're not made to feel like you're.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like both vibes, because sometimes like martinis need to turn into Miller Lights, right? Seb Gorka's Back Pain says, in honor of Cormac McCarthy, what is your favorite book by him? Also, please do an entire show dedicated to the specific circumstances that you would be excited over a UFO sighting. It sounds like a productive use of time.
I mean, if I actually saw it with my own eyes, yeah, that shit would be cool. I haven't done that yet. And yeah, if you could get good 4K footage of like a flying saucer with one of those, like,
so you're not a
glass
believer
domes.
in the most recent government leaks?
I
Or not
have the
leaks,
same
allegations.
I have the same position that I always have, which is that I don't care about the preamble. You can have really cool preamble and real good hinting at stuff, but this is all like, it's all hearsay to me. Like, I'll believe it when I see it. Give me the pudding. And I also, like, I told somebody, I said, this really pissed people off on Majority Report, but I said, like, look, if there's actually no upshot, if this doesn't affect my life in any way, it's just like, we have this, like, to me, it's like finding out there's a new bird. Like,
Come on,
like,
Matt. No, you can't say that.
I just gotta say, like, first of all, everyone's so shocked. Like, why are people acting like we didn't just confirm aliens? Because we gotta go to fucking work. Because rent's due. Like, and because I'm still driving a fucking, like, my same Accord. Like, I don't know. Like, yeah. Like, what do you want me to do?
For myself, I don't know. I feel like my life would be very affected by knowing that there's other aliens. Maybe
What are you gonna do?
Okay, but here's the thing I want to know about another aliens. It's like, I want them to tell me what religion is true. I'd be really stoked if they were just like the Baptists, right? Southern Baptists is like the true religion of the universe or something wild like that.
Yeah.
Because everyone would want them to be very enlightened, but it would be wild if they were like super advanced alien society. Is just like fire and brimstone, baby.
They're tradcath.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, no, the Mormons were right all along.
Yeah.
That would be probably the odds. You can probably get good odds on that one. Yeah, I don't know.
Dylan B says, as a staffer for the former Liberal defense minister who was frozen out of AU-KUS negotiations, Australia, UK, US negotiations, went public about being sexually assaulted. Minister had her partner taking notes at the trial despite being warned it could damage credibility of her testimony. Trial ended with juror misconduct and prosecutor didn't go to retrial because the victim was hospitalized after attempting suicide. Flash forward to change of government, and former defense minister has now threatened defamation against the current minister for claiming she was part of a cover-up. It's also disheartening, and it feels like it is only going to continue spiraling until the survivor. Yeah. Man, it's terrible. I don't know. Like Australian politics, just rough.
Yeah. Crikey.
Joe Snuffy says, on capitalism ruining games, did you see the CEO of the Embracer Group, in essence, BlackRock for game studios, said as they announced mass layoffs and closures, here's a taste. I have a high degree of confidence that this entire process is going to easily translate into better product selection that's more profitable. And that gives us an opportunity for growth in the future, and that helps us leverage the IP that we own within our organization. I mean, we own Lord of the Rings. We need to be exploiting Lord of the Rings in a very significant fashion and turn that into one of the biggest gaming franchises in the world. And that's obviously something that we're going to be doing. That's a much better use of resources than some of the other projects that some of our teams have been working on.
Wow.
I mean, this is why we're gonna see a million more fucking Marvel movies before.
And if people watch the Go Off Kings Twitch stream, they've been playing Lord of the Rings Gollum.
Yeah, that was a disaster, wasn't it?
It is so funny. You can watch the video of the VODs of Jesse.
Why is it so
playing that.
bad? I mean, do you have a sense?
Yes, it's just incomprehensible to know what you're supposed to do at any given moment. It steals like it honestly looks like Banjo Kazooie at some points. It steals like elements. There's nothing original about it. It was made by some German developer, and it was so bad that they went and found like them talking about it. And the guy's like, yeah, I tried to make the earlier levels easier and the later levels harder. And it's like, it took Jesse like 20 hours to beat it, and they did it all on stream. It's the number one Gollum streamers on Twitch.
That's awesome.
And they hate it, and they only played it so much because of how bad it was. But yeah, there you go. You explained that IP pretty well there.
I would say on the other side, I don't know. Maybe our Australian listeners could fill us in on it, but apparently the AFL, the Australian Football League, like their Aussie rules football, which is just a wild game, and I don't judge because I know football's incomprehensible to others as well, but they made their big like football game Aussie rules football, and they were adamant that it needed to be done by like an Australian developer instead of EA, which I sort of feel, but apparently it was done in the worst possible way ever, and it was like one of the worst games ever made.
I mean, that's the thing,
but in a way it's like really awesome because like they've released it. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just
mothballing it,
holding it. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the gaming nationalism, but it has not worked out, I guess, for one, Australia, or two, was it Rhode Island that gave Kurt Schilling a bunch of money, and basically like he owes them like millions of dollars still.
Oh shit, I don't even know about that. Well, that's it for discourse, Matt. So if we want to see if we can get the calls to work, we can do
let's do it. And yep, here we go, folks. Call number one.
Hey, Matt and David. I've been going back and watching all the CMBS clips, and I know David's been trying to run away from this, but what is Dave's economic minutes thoughts on this upcoming recession, whether it's going to happen or not? Inflation's coming down, but the job market is just absolutely dog shit. Just from my perspective, I'm going on month 2 of being unemployed just because I have a master's degree, but my contract ran out. Every job in like the chemistry field right now, STEM field, is just all contractor work. And like for people with masters in like New Jersey, I'm getting calls for like part-time jobs at like 22 an hour. It's ridiculous. When do you think if the only thought is like maybe interest rates going down again from the Fed, and then just jobs starting to hire people again? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I'm not trying to run away from it. I was just joking. That segment meant I had to answer difficult questions on the fly sometimes. I mean, look, I think if you like look at like, everyone talks about interest rates because I think people sort of have gathered this understanding that was like novel at the time when people were making these arguments in like 2015, 2016.
Conspiratorial, people would say.
What?
People, you can say that it was a labor discipline mechanism being conspiratorial.
Yeah, no. Well, when people were saying also that like low interest rates were just creating all sorts of insane.
Oh,
things,
right.
Like in the economy, like people acted as if it's like conspiratorial or it's like outside the mainstream, and like now I think more and more people recognize. I mean, Trump was like furious at the idea that they ever raised interest rates when he was president because he knew what that meant.
Right.
So like the rising in interest rates is exposing all of this insanity in like the U.S. economy. I mean, like if you're looking at like housing prices in certain areas, like Austin is a city where like there was insane speculation on houses here. It's out of control, and now that market is like cratering because so many particularly like big financial firms were buying houses that are like, I'm a hometown boy, so like I'm very biased to them, like those beautiful old Texas cottages like 3-4 rooms, right? But selling them trying to sell them for like $1.2 million. No one with $1.2 million wants to live in that like 1950s style house. It's just ridiculous. And people were willing to pay it during the pandemic, and then like the pricing and the speculation around it made it seem like a sure bet. So more and more firms were buying more and more houses here, and now they're starting to come to the realization it's like, oh shit, there's just not a lot of buyers, and like a lot of that is because people can't get a mortgage because the interest rates are just too high to justify. But all of that kind of stuff is just going to create more and more of a squeeze, and meaning more and more of the capital that has been sort of accumulated by those at the top means they're going to get tighter and tighter and tighter with their money. This is like what happens in a recession, is that like the people with their money, not like everyone always talks about so much as it's like it's consumer spending. Like, yes, certainly consumer spending in a recession like creates an issue, but really what happens is you get a freeze on investment from the powerful. We were talking with Nick French about this earlier, right? It's like not only do we socialists think that like workers deserve a higher wage, but also that we don't think that this unelected group of people should be in charge of social investment in society. And this is a great example of that when you start to see this like impracticality of like why capitalism is such a bizarre system, is that like they're going to get spooked because they're going to feel like it's going to be harder and harder and harder for them to realize profit. That they start pulling their money out of their out of the economy, right? And then you start to see that squeeze on labor, right? That's like what we're experiencing right now. The thing that was really notable about the kind of post-recession, Great Recession era too, was that like profitability was really low and a lot more traditional and technically like safer bets. That's why you saw all this wild speculation in tech and all this stuff,
Right.
and that's getting challenged right now, right? So not only is like does that mean like those companies are going to get hit, but also think about how much capital is invested in the stocks of those companies that then basically becomes evaporates, right? Because if you buy a bunch of stock in a company and you sort of expect that it's going to continue to grow, when you take that money back out after it's sort of lost money, that money's disappearing effectively, right? Less is coming out than went in. Or even in more importantly, like in terms of like real dollars with inflation, right? So this is where you start to see the squeeze. I think that is no doubt about it that like we're going to start to continue to see these things downstream. And the thing that's really scary about it is the not only are we seeing like a lack of interest in creating some kind of real stimulus program that you would hope the federal government would do in a real sense that creates like jobs and does things like build infrastructure and builds out like our green energy. There's just this kind of fixation on on carrots for capitalists, right? What's really scary is that you also have an administration right now in the Biden, talking about the Biden administration, that is like willingly watching programs disappear that put more money in people's pockets. I mean, one that's going to affect a lot of people in our age cohort is going to be these student loan payments, right?
Mhm.
People are about to see massive amounts of money. So like if you're already going into this being worried about your job, right, or being worried about if you're able to afford things. I mean, like just talking personally, like I've been feeling the squeeze way more than I have in recent years, doing things like putting things back on the shelf at the grocery store. I mean, it's cliche at this point, but like eggs, like it's insane to sit here and walk and be in the grocery store and put it back up like it's like a nice beer or wine or something, like, oh, maybe next week I'll get eggs for myself, right? What the fuck is going on? And then imagine what that's going to be like, when people are being expected to pay $400 or $500 a month to service their student loans, something that the economy was fine, not getting paid for these past few years. I mean,
yeah,
like,
and let's go zero in on the economics of that, which is, to be clear, like if you would rather the folks with student debt in your communities take 400, 500 bucks a month and give it to a fucking banker,
yeah,
who was allowed to finance their education, who should have been taxed and had that education paid for, but you are going to prefer that money goes into those financial institutions' pockets rather than to, like, say, a local contractor or like, right? Like, it's fucking insane. And any like sort of loser who is sort of anti-debt cancellation, like, I hear all the time from people, and maybe that's just my profession, but all the time people, I don't have a college education, but I'm not actually that worked up about it. The people who are worked up about it, the people on the editorial boards, they all went to the Ivy League.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. And like, so yeah, I mean, like, I don't want to sit here and make predictions or anything like that, but look, things are looking really bad. I think the big thing to watch if you want to have the, smart cap on your head is to look at commercial real estate. That's an industry that's suffering. There's a lot of speculative financial products that are associated with that market because that's like physical, right? So people are like, this is a safe thing to invest in. Well, a lot of those things are going to start coming into question in the next few months to the next few years, and like that could be catastrophic. So look, there are some real fundamental problems with the American economy that like were sort of cultivated in the low interest era during the Great Recession. And then weird kind of peculiar things that happened in like the supply chain during the COVID crisis. All these things basically are creating like a pretty dangerous perfect storm. But the thing again is that like it's avoidable. The pain that may be coming for people is avoidable. And I think one of the most important things that you can remember, like if you want to think about economics in this country, is to not treat these things as, edicts from the Lord, right? Like these are human decisions, and there are government decisions, for example, to let these things happen. And then there are also capitalist decisions, like we were just talking about with the graphics cards, right? It's like, capacity problems are starting to be dealt with. The demand is going down a little bit, but no, we're making so much money. Why would we ever lower the prices?
Yep.
That's I think the thing that like, this is, I don't know, it's just like a particular example of something that just a decision that is being made in corporate boardrooms across this country every day that are only extending the crisis, right? The eggs thing. I mean, we were talking about earlier. I mean, like, it was a massive speculation issue that created those high prices on eggs, right?
Right. All right. Joe Snuffy here.
Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Joe said Joe has two.
Yep. I got the second one here.
Hey, everybody, Joe Snuffy decided to re-record the call to be a bit faster. So I'm sure people probably have heard by now that the war in Ukraine hit a new fever pitch over the last week. Ukraine launched its long-awaited counteroffensive, and as I've noticed that most outlets that American lefties would get news from are doing an amazingly bad job of covering the war with any degree of detail or context, I figured I would throw a really quick update. So the front line in the war is about the size of the western coastline of the state of Florida. And Ukraine, they've launched their counterattack pretty much in almost the dead center of it. They're trying to reach the city of Mariupol. If they can penetrate about 30 or so kilometers, then they'll be able to sever the rail lines that are the main like logistical lines of communication that Russia has been using to resupply its forces that are down towards Crimea. If they do that, then that would very much hasten the end of the war. And so far, things, anyone who says that they've achieved a breakthrough has no idea what they're talking about. Anyone who says that the offensive is bogged down has no idea what they're talking about. This is one of those things where not every kilometer of ground that they fight over in this type of maneuver warfare is going to be equally hard to fight over. Some areas they'll be able to move really fast. Other areas, they'll have to fight for every square meter. So far, things seem to be going pretty well for Ukraine. Russia's been launching a fighting withdrawal back to their first fortified line, which is about 15 kilometers or so, 10 to 15, depending on what point in the line you're looking at, behind where the front was when this all kicked off about 5 days ago. And they're doing a competent job at it. They are good on the defense over the course of this war when they've had enough time to prepare. And the casualty and losses of equipment rates for Ukraine seem to be in line with the 1% to 2% a day that you would expect with this type of offensive. So overall, things are going, about as you would expect. The Ukrainians have penetrated 5 to 7 kilometers in most areas. And they're advancing along 5 separate axes, so 5 different distinct points towards distinct areas. Right now, they've got about another 7 before they're going to the first major offensive line. If anyone hears, Stein, like Stein. They just really fucking long and fucking name. But there's a town that starts with like
Joe.
Oh, we're sort of losing you
I'm
at the
sorry,
end here.
Joe. I'm not sure what happened there. We got some sort of glitch, but appreciate the update. Again, like I've said this before, but I have a difficult time trying to be any type of authoritative about what I think's going on
Military strategy in particular.
Yeah. I mean, I regret. I just don't like. I think the online sort of, what do they call it, the intelligence community.
Mhm.
It's interesting that exists now, but I don't have any sort of. I don't have the time invested in it, to be honest.
Kowalski says in the chat, Joe is literally reporting from the front.
You got that Starlink scrambled. Oh wow! Okay, we got to go to this Dylan call because Dylan finally calling with something approaching a microphone that is like.
Oh hell yeah! Let's go. Let's go.
Interpretable.
Witch hunt. Finally, Matt Leck's grand jury has gotten its way, and the great indicted yet again. 71 counts or whatever. This is what they call in prosecution.
Just say this most recent one was, I believe, 37 counts. The 71 number comes from adding the previous times he's been indicted.
Tutorial. It's called stacking, of count stacking, where you make it look, you have so many counts that the jury's like, oh, maybe, I won't get that one, but maybe we can get him on this. It's just trying to create as many opportunities as possible to attack the greatest president, who had the greatest program, who did so many great things for everybody. And if he wants to show like the defense strategy for Australia to, get into a fight with Jim Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis on, in public, that's his right to do that. People are going to lie about him. He should be allowed to say, this is where our nuclear installations are in Europe. That, anyways, you hate as I said, it's prosecutorial misconduct. Speaking of which, great segue by me, by the way. In Australia, less great is there was a woman who was working for the former Department of Defence when Minister of Defence when all of this was happening, who made a lot of these kind of AUKUS deal. And she alleged that she was sexually assaulted, and it was covered up. We're now at the point in which people are suing each other over whether or not they knew the ministers, our environmental minister has just been sued by this person. We love it. It's very dark. It's so dark that I'm not even going to say Yigam because it feels distasteful. But still, anyways, it's fucked. But great show as always. And yeah, Gigarugaram. I'm praying for you, man.
Thank you,
Dylan. Friend.
Did we headline this? Teamsters secure air conditioning for UPS fleet in major tentative deal. The Teamsters and UPS agreed to tentative language to equip the delivery and logistics companies' fleet of vehicles with air conditioning systems, new heat shields, and additional fans.
Do they get that like just now?
That's according to the Teamsters Twitter. It looks like a tentative language, they're saying.
Because the argument, I mean, the thing that's going on right now for people who are not familiar is that the push for an authorization vote for a major strike has been sort of on the docket. It's an ongoing campaign right now. But yeah, no, I mean, it looks like, yeah, no, I mean, that's huge. I mean, we got to get Paul Prescott back on the show to give us the skinny on what's going on in negotiations. But yeah, it's from David Dan. Because remember, like, this is one of the things that was such a big fight is having AC in the vehicles, which is hard to imagine. What I mean, like, look, I think it's been like we've been cracking into the low 100s recently here, for the past week. Can you imagine, a full day shift driving around? I mean, anywhere 80 degrees is a lot, right? But like, not having that kind of system in your truck.
I don't know where in the United States, like North Dakota, you want air conditioning in the summertime. Like where are you in the United States where not having air conditioning is okay?
Yeah, no, we'll have to get Paul on to give us the update on what's going on there because we support our Teamsters over here at Left Reckoning.
Absolutely. All right, we got 3 more calls here, folks.
Wait, I'm just going to say something right now. I love our
Yep.
good friend from Australia. I'm just seeing in the chat. We will ban and mute any one of our patrons. We do love you so much, but we're not going to turn the Left Reckoning chat into a thing that where everyone's saying gig 'em on the regular. Because that will drive me insane.
Hey guys, Dave from Jamaica. Sorry for last week's rambly one. My brain was not all set. But all right, so what I was going to say, since it has been brought up since you guys were talking about RFK and such, is that I generally feel, and I think this critique goes to Dr. West and it goes to Marianne Williamson. We don't need another messaging campaign. As in, I think people already kind of know things suck. They don't, they actually want solutions or a path out. And I don't, even though I don't see how you get that with a pure messaging campaign with no real shot of winning, right? You need to have something behind it, like you're building a movement or something like that. I don't see any of these campaigns as anything other than, frankly, slight vanity projects, slightly, and messaging campaigns. And that's just kind of my honest take. If they were running for maybe a smaller office or something like that, then I would kind of change my opinion on it. But outside of that, I don't see the utility of it. Well, that's all I have to say. All right, guys. Keep up the good work as always.
I mean, look, I think that I might disagree with you a little bit, Dave, on this. Is that like I have been making the argument that I don't think that like what we should be doing is like a messaging campaign. I've just said that like this idea that we're going to do another one of those, I don't think is like very attractive. For the left, or like where we should be going. I think that we should be showing people that there's, how do I want to say? At a certain point, a lot of the people who consider themselves on the left today have been convinced of the arguments and the ideas of the left. And you see how far that can get you. It can get you a lot, right? It can get you some people elected to office. It can, change the conversation. It can move some things. But certainly the wall that the left, particularly like the Democratic Socialist left, is up against right now is that, they've expanded as far as they're really going to get with kind of like message or idea focused stuff. Like eventually you have to start convincing people that participating in politics, participating in a movement, participating in an organization is something that could change their life, right? So that's like my worry about the messaging thing. And I know you share that. That's not what you're getting at there. But I will just say this. I think that there is value in making in saying that all these people have the right to run, and like these kind of anti-democratic forces out there that are saying, oh, we played Mehdi Hassan, last week or 2 weeks back, where he was saying that Marianne Williamson is acting as a spoiler, right? And that spoiler argument goes far beyond just like the kind of traditional one, right? Where they say a Green Party candidate might win some elections in a state, win some votes in a state, and those votes would have gone to the other person, therefore they allow the right to win, right? That's the typical spoiler argument. What is being argued now by people is that somebody coming up and making legitimate criticisms of the sitting president is opening up the door for Donald Trump. That is an inherently anti-democratic statement, because that's saying we're putting a pause on politics, right? Which is disastrous. And people should take that threat very seriously, that there is like a whole host of people with very powerful platforms who are saying any form of politics outside of, not just in the sense of like supporting or not supporting or voting one way or not voting one way, literally saying things about a person who wants to be the president of the United States is dangerous, and is something that like should be condemned. That is an inherently worrying line that way too many people are comfortable with. So like I won't go like, like we can say like who should the left support, what should the socialist movement do, etc. But I don't think that it's fair to say like therefore like these people may be doing messaging campaigns, therefore maybe they shouldn't be doing it in the first place. I don't agree with that. Is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. I think fine. Like don't ask me to get super excited about it so long as it remains a messaging campaign. But I'm not, averse to those being run because that's what Bernie's was, and it turned into something more.
Yeah.
I suspect, along with David, that these won't be turned into something more, but I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
And if they do, then I think, I'm not averse to that happening. I think like if Cornell takes off in the Green Party, he forces Joe to like elaborate. Because I mean, look, we have plenty of time to deal with is he a spoiler then, or is he not? But that question should also be like, hey, what are you doing to basically like solidify your party against this threat? Like you're continuing to throw people off of like child poverty stuff, all these sorts of things. Like maybe you should actually come through as opposed to, like I think that's not actually a bad position for a debate to be. I think people need to be, but I honestly don't want to get too deep into that. The thing is, it might. I share your pessimism that any of these, and I particularly think that there's like fucking 3 of them now. Like, so the idea that any one of them coheres into like a solid left movement, I don't know. I'm skeptical of it, but maybe it does happen. And so like, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And, R. Taylor in the chat is saying, he hopes we will have Marianne on the show, and like I'd be very happy to interview her on the program. We can maybe see if we can set something up. Because I'm happy to hear it. I just like, I think that like we really need to be much more rooted in like these kind of class politics. I mean, like, look, just like, what do I mean by that?
Yeah, it's a question. What would it take to show that it's more than a messaging campaign?
What would something take that? I mean, you would need to see more significant buy-in from people that we're not seeing. Like if we start seeing more labor groups supporting these campaigns, that's something that's very exciting.
That's what did it for Bernie. Like
Yeah.
Bernie, like teachers, nurses unions. Yeah.
And like obviously like a lot of the Democratic Party and a lot of like the big unions for a long time have just endorsed like the centrist Democrats. So it's not the end all be all, right? Necessarily. But like if you don't see that kind of ground game, if you don't see that kind of excitement, particularly from the rank and file, right, which is the thing that's more important to me than, for example, like officials, people at the top supporting a campaign, where rank and file workers going, that means something to me. But going back to what I was saying a second ago, what do I mean by like returning to like the class movement, the class politics? A very clear example of this was what happened in Alabama with the Ware Met coal strike, and what happened with the railroad strike. Where was the capacity of the left of the socialist movement to support those two, right? People supported them in the sense of saying, I support those guys, right? But where was like the actual capacity to act and to help them in their favor? And I'm not saying that nobody did anything, that's untrue. But was the like particularly talk about like the media project and the audiences and people who consume progressive media and things like that, where was that actually effective in implementing like change and support for those people? I think it was very limited, right? And as a left, like I also don't want to sit here and say that like basically what we need. I don't want people to get the wrong imagining that basically like if we had turned all of the progressive mouthpieces or something like that into supporting them, that would have moved the needle necessarily. I think it probably would have been good, don't get me wrong. But I'm talking about more structurally, like organizationally, like do we have like physical support for people, right? Do we have like monetary support for people, right? Can we help fund food pantries, right? Can we help pressure politicians who are going to vote with Joe Biden to block the rail strike, right? Was that capacity developed? It wasn't.
Right.
And like that's what I'm talking about is like in a real practical way. Something we all saw is like what we don't have right now that we have to be building. And like I just don't know how much hyper focusing on presidential politics right now opens up that door. If they can work together in unison, that's a great thing. That would be something I would want to see. But we're not seeing it developing as much right now. And I think that like That should be the laser focus. And then if we're doing that and we want to debate like maybe who we want to support in the presidential primary, even if it is just for messaging, that's great. But what we get right now is hyper focus on who we want to support in the presidential primary, and then secondary conversations about, oh, this strike might happen, or that strike might happen, or this movement might happen. That has to flip, and that's sort of what I'm getting at. That like there's an over focus on one thing and less focus on, I think, the thing that's more material and important.
Yeah. Two more calls. Ziggy from Nashville. First one here.
Oh, hey y'all, it's Ziggy from Nashville. Just calling in. I just wanted to thank Matt for. I called into the Majority Report the other day, and I only heard that you said "Hey Big" when after I played it back. I got contacted by some other people in the Americans United chapter, and word got to them that I'd called in. And it was they said I did a good job, blah, 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 but I thought I was going to get chewed out because I was like, oh no, did I do something wrong? But anyway, I only heard you say, hey, after I played it back. Couldn't hear it through the phone, so I just wanted to thank you for that. It was pretty cool. But anyway, I didn't really have anything to say. I just wanted to thank y'all. And hey, we had one Pride and that I went to cable at, and there were no hate preachers. Apparently they did a good job. It was in a county where a lot of wealthy people live, and we had to fight for that Pride. And but I was really happy there were no hate preachers, because I know Nashville Pride is going to have a lot of hate preachers, so or just hate in general. So that'll be fun. But anyway, I love you guys. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Thanks, Iggy. Stay safe out there. I saw a clip from local news in Iowa. Older guy, like 60 something, wearing a shirt. I can't remember what it was, but it's very like "I'm gay" shirt. And the woman, who was like a journalist, like 30 years old, like asked him like, what would have happened if you wore that shirt 30 years ago? He's like, I would have probably been on the ground with massive physical injuries. And like I've been wondering how that stuff is playing out. Like Fargo has a big gay pride every year. I mean, big. It gets people's attention in Fargo, and like it seemed like we had turned a corner which is bizarre because that was still in the midst of like fresh from the Defense of Marriage Act attempt by Bush and stuff like that. But the atmosphere this year is just wild, and to everybody going out, be safe, and God bless you.
And thank you.
All right, and then final call of the evening from our John Brown fan himself, Kowalski from Nebraska.
Hey, it is Kowalski from Nebraska. I hope you guys are all doing well. I'm sure your tech issue will only lead you to further greatness. Anywho, when you guys were discussing the AI stuff, it kind of made me think of a discussion I had with one of my neighbors when we were talking about like how things were when he was my age for preference. He's like in his 80s. And he said that one of the worst things they ever did was put air conditioning in a tractor and build really good headlights. He said the problem is that when he was a kid, when the sun went down, you got to go home. Now you can work basically as long as you want to, which means people will work until basically they're too exhausted to stay awake. So it went from, dusk till dawn, or dawn till dusk, and then it became, you just go until you drop, and then you get up right away. And we basically shot ourselves in the foot. Now, I understand what he was saying, but that's just because the technology was implemented poorly, which goes back to the economic system that we have, where every technological innovation just means, we can cut down on the number of people, utilize this new technology, and overwork the existing workforce. I have a feeling that if the strike for the writers loses, we're going to see a lot of writers having to just spend an enormous amount of time just fixing all of the mistakes that they're going to try to make the AI scripts, functional So we're going to have like writers who are going to be overworked on half-assed scripts being created by this technology, when in reality, if the technology was implemented properly, you could probably cut down the number of hours the actual writers have, and they could, you know, just use it to increase their own productivity. But that's not the system that we live in. Capitalism is just like creating just destruction, you know, just like with taxis getting destroyed by Uber, and now Uber is destroying everyone's wallet. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know. Just, yeah, the world is, we need our John Brown moment. That's what I'm getting at. You all have a good night.
You know, that reminds me of one of my favorite novels, Jim Croce's The Harvest, which is set in like the 1600s, but it's about enclosure. And that is a form of enclosure, right? Like those days that it was too hot, those are now ownable, you know, by whoever's able to extract finance. And the same, extract the money. And the same was true of like the whole fucking winter. It used to be like, if you're a farmer, the winter was your downtime to basically repair tools and, you know, deal with the family. And then, you know, slowly we've been moved out of that, and you need to year-round labor. And yeah, I mean, look, I think I don't really think that the chatbot shit that is going to replace writers. I think you just need more time for writers to write. I don't think that stuff is actually that good, but I do think like the generative, there's certain like visual stuff that I think actual artists could use, and the problem is that it's capitalized by, you know, computer chip owners and stuff like that.
Yeah, which is exactly the problem with most tech advances under the system. Well, folks, thank you so much for hanging out with us on Left Reckoning Postgame. We made it public because we're having tech issues, so sorry. And we tried a new system, so sorry if anything was a little wonky, but I think it went pretty well. Don't forget, this Thursday at 3 Central on the Griscom stream, we're going to be talking Cuba with Amina. Really looking forward to that. So make sure that you come by and say hello and hang out with us. We'll have a bonus episode up for everybody this weekend. And everybody, take care, and we will